Hello, my name is Connor, and I'm here with Pat. We're here to talk about our project that we made, our poker game. So I'm going to share my screen and talk about the code that we made. All right. Okay. So the majority of our poker game revolves around a crate that we discovered called RS Poker. Now, RS Poker is very helpful and that allows us to evaluate hands. And this is a big deal for us because the crate itself is able to evaluate and rank hands on its own. So here in our finished block of code here, we're able to just assign with a bunch of hands that we have passed in, we can iterate through the hands and then assign a rank to them. And then when a rank is greater than another one, we know that that is now the top rank. So we can move through finish using this rank function that we have in our RS Poker crate. And that allows us to actually find which crate is the best. What's also nice about crate is that it allows us to give the starting hands for many people. It comes with like a deal function, which is actually very helpful. Here in deal two, we have a random, we can randomly generate a number in through the deck of 52. So I'll pick a random card and it can deal, and then we'll remove the card. So that is helpful. And the deck is also helpful because, it's able to maintain certain status for like a card. So if we look at the card implementation here, the card, one second. The card contains certain values such as the suit and the this is hand shoot the suit and the value of a card. So then this allows us to easily evaluate it. So what else we have in deck functions? We start off by creating a player. So if we look at our main function, the way that it works, we kind of have our new game where we'll create players, and then okay. We'll use this function called create players, which is how we kind of start our game. So we'll create this vector of players, and players themselves carry certain amounts of states, including their hand, their name, the amount of chips that they have, if they're playing, as in if they're being asked to bet or not, if they're eligible, whether meaning are they able to earn chips in this hand, like versus if they folded or not, or and the cards, the two cards that they have. And this is important that there's a difference between the cards that they have and the hand that they have. So then this is what give starting will have. It will shuffle the deck and then deal out cards to them so that we can have a vector of players with cards in their hand. And then after create players, we kind of just run this function. We will run auto bet around. We'll run round 5 times or 3 times. Each time, pretty much just printing the board, having a current value, and then running this feature called auto bet, which auto bet is a function we wrote that allows the user who is playing the game to bet chips for their cards. We're here. So the user will be prompted to either call, raise, or fold for -1, 0, or a value that they choose to put in. And based off that, we will evaluate the code. So if it's -1, we will print the player as folded, and we'll set the playing status of the player to false and eligibility of the player to false. Else, we will evaluate how what their bet means. So either they have to go all in. If they're betting more than the chips that they have, they'll call, meaning we don't have to change the current bet, or they'll raise, meaning that we'll have to actually make a new status for the biggest bet. So if the player were to raise, we would set L, which is the greatest bet player, to the name. And then once we get through that, we'll look through the end of the code. And if we see that if the count, so the amount of players that we've had, is equal to the size, so the amount of players that are in the game, if we've talked to that amount of people and the current bet is equal to the bet that has been passed in, meaning that nobody has raised, then we know that we can return. And if that's not true, we know that somebody has raised the bet. So we need to run through again where this time we'll pass in the current bet, which is this new greater bet, and we'll pass in the highest raiser to be the person who raised. So the next time, once it reaches that person, and it sees that, oh, this person has already raised, then we know that we don't have to ask them to bet again. And then this final part for auto bet is for the automatic players, so the people who aren't playing the CPU kind of. It's not super complicated, but pretty much we just generate a number between 1 and 3. And based off of that, that's how they'll play. So if they generate a 1, they'll actually fold. So we'll set their eligibility and their playing to false. If it's 2, they will call. So they will, if they have enough chips, they will just, call, and they'll lose those chips. Else they'll have to fold, or they can raise. And if so, then similar way we raise in our own user feature. And yes, so that is the way that our auto bet feature works. And then, as I explained before, we'll run that a certain amount of times. Once we realize that the river or the board has reached a length of 5, meaning 5 cards have been dealt, we'll run this finish feature, which will use this feature called river prep, which puts all of the cards for each in the river into each hand, so that each hand now has a total of 7 cards, and we can evaluate these 7 cards, these 7 card hands, to figure out who has the best value out of all of that. And that is how we determine the winner. After we've determined the winner, we can add those chips to the pot. Everybody else will lose their chips, and we will set the person eligibility back to true if they had gone all in or they had folded before, and then we're ready to play again. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Pat to talk about the graphical side of the game.
All right. Would you be able to share give host settings to automation on the screen?
Say that again?
So I can share my screen.
Oh yeah. Wait, how do I do
that? Okay, so for the actual graphical side of our program, it's not super complicated. For me, it was just a little complex figuring out how to actually draw stuff. But once you actually figured out how to get a couple shapes going, it started to get a little easier. So the first thing, you had the app, which is basically, think of it or like our structure of our game. You have some basic functions and basic variables like, the cards, and then you have a vector that holds all the players. This card map basically holds all the images of the cards that we want to display, stuff like the pot, the deck, and then the river. For the actual functions of the app, we have render, which obviously draws the entire screen, the entire window. Stuff like table, outer ring, carpet 2, that draws all of the actual table and how the actual game looks. This carpet texture is how we actually draw the images of the cards. Each texture needs to have its own link to a PNG image that I found online to link to its own image, which we then, through here, we are every time it runs through and draws again, we are updating the image that belongs to each card, because depending on how the game is going, we might want to change the card. Like if the game's over and we want to show what cards everyone had, we would then update the cards in everyone's hands to show their actual cards rather than just the back of the cards, which you'll see later. Down here, we actually do the dimensions for all the cards. We have a max limit of 8 players and a minimum of 3 players. So we have all 8 positions drawn out, but then based on, you can see down here, based on the actual amount of players that are in the game, we draw out various spots, which you'll see later also. Yeah, so this is just drawing it out. And then what really runs most of the program is this press function. When the user, to move the game forward, they press the letter D on the keyboard to then get a new card and start the round of betting. It's kind of describe how the round of betting works. It's pretty intuitive, but you pretty much just have to follow the prompts on the screen. And then based on the actions of the user, if it's the end of the game, different cards are updated. The back is shown, the back is not shown. Certain players are redrawn or not drawn depending on if they lose and they lose all the chips. Just like visualizing the basic concepts of poker that are implemented in a deck function. And then actually in the main function, we have pretty much just setting up how everything's going to work. We have to start by giving everyone their hands. We have to set all of the actual like default values for an app. And then we have the actual loop that runs, that is constantly updating, constantly rendering and checking for inputs from me, the user, for me essentially pressing D to start a new hand. Yeah, with that, I think we're ready to give a demonstration. So I'll just do cargo run to then, for our example, I'll do 8 people. For this, I'll enter our names. Okay, and then it takes a little bit and you can see it'll then construct our board here. We got a pocket 3, it's pretty good hand. So then to start the actual game, you press, as I said, you press D. And then it'll prompt you to ask how many or how you would like to bet in the terminal. So it says you have $100 remaining, 0 to call, -1 to fold, 0 to check. So we'll bet $10 and you can see, like mom is raised, Jill is called, Jack is folded. Yeah, everyone does their own moves. So the bet is now 18 to call. I will call 18. Someone raised, dad raised to 27. I will also call that. It's been raised to 33. I will also call that. I really like my hand. Okay. So now the round is over, round of betting is over, and now we will see the flop. So we see the flop, nothing too good for us, but we once again hit D to start the next round of betting again. So now we have $12 remaining. I'm gonna bet $0 because I'm trying to play it close. Everyone else is called. So then I'm gonna go back and keep going. So we'll see the next card because everyone checked. See an ace. Deal another round of betting. I'm gonna bet. I'm running a little low on chips, so I'm gonna bet 1 chip, 1 to call. I'm gonna call that. Okay, Jill has decided to fold. We are now on the river card. Another ace. It's a juicy hand. Okay, so we're gonna hit D one final time to do the last round of betting, and I'm just gonna call. So now you can see the evaluations. It says Pat is the winner. I win $346. Dad is folded. So, in the end, everyone folded. So in this example, everyone is folded. So none of the cards are shown, but had people stayed in the game and they gone to a final showdown, their cards are flipped and shown so like everyone can see what everyone's card is. But then to start the next game, all you have to do is hit D again. And it shuffles up all the cards. It like hides all the cards. Had the other users shown their cards, it would then hide them. And then we had 2 3s, but now we have a 3-5. And all you have to do is hit D one more time, and it starts the game again. Yeah, so that's a quick demonstration of our actual app, and I think that just about wraps up our presentation.